Hello, welcome to Women in the Mix. I am Jessica Toon, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Pacific Northwest chapter of the Recording Academy. As a woman in music myself, it is such a great honor to bring you this event today, a celebration of and conversation with very special panel of women who are leading and shaping the music industry across the expansive Pacific Northwest region. Today's panel features many women I respect and admire who lead our industry and work in service of our community. In addition to those who you will see on screen today, I want to send a heartfelt thanks and acknowledge all of the women who work behind the scenes to bring this event to life. The incredible women and female identifying individuals on our Board of Governors, including the co-chairs of our chapter's membership and education committees. Shout out to Victoria, Jody, Kimié, and Niffer. Thank you so much for your work. And my colleagues producing this event behind the scenes, Tammy and Steph. And I can think of no better way to kick us off today than with a very special live video performance recorded exclusively for you all. Please enjoy the premiere video performance of Ghost by Shaina Shepherd.
Hello, Recording Academy. I'm Shaina Shepherd, and these are my friends. This is a song called Ghost. I drink my wine at the spend all my time on my own. Why can't I find a reason to unwind? Just me at home. I lie in bed with the lights on.
That was so incredible. Thank you so much to Shaina and the band for making that recording and for making time to be with us from the road today. Before we welcome our panel, I wanted to really ground us in reality and provide some context for today's conversation. I'll do this by sharing a couple of key findings from the recently published results of the Women in the Mix study, which was a cooperative effort by the Recording Academy, Arizona State University, and Berklee College of Music. It comes as no surprise to any of us that women are severely underrepresented in the music industry, accounting for less than a quarter of working artists and less than 3% of producers and engineers. Of those surveyed, 57% reported having to work 2 or more jobs, and more than half of respondents work more than 40 hours per week. Despite working multiple jobs and extra hours, more than 36% of women artists are making less than $40,000 per year, while gender expansive respondents are twice as likely to make less than $40,000 a year. Roughly 1 out of every 2 respondents said they chose not to have children or to have fewer children than they wanted because of their careers. Across all racial identities, 84% of respondents had faced discrimination. 77% felt they had been treated differently in the music industry because of their gender. Women of color reported feeling the highest level of discomfort in the workplace and noted less workplace support. These numbers are staggering and troubling, but this study was designed to influence advocates, allies, and leaders to work toward a more inclusive and equitable industry while amplifying women's voices, which leads us into today's conversation. It is my pleasure to introduce today's moderator, Déja Fitzgerald. Déja is a musician and artist, a community advocate, a counseling psychologist in training, intersectionality-centered equity and inclusion researcher, educator, consultant, and everything else. Welcome, Déja. Thank you so much for being here.
One, thank you so much for having me, and thank you so
Absolutely.
much to Shaina for a wonderful performance.
Wasn't that mind-blowing?
I mean, my heart was racing. It could be because I'm about to moderate this, or it was the energy from that performance, one of the two.
Totally, same. Well, before I turn it over to you, I just want to remind our audience that we're reserving some time towards the end of today's event for a Q&A with our panelists. So please use the Q&A feature through Zoom to send us your questions. And with that, Déja, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Well, hey, everyone. I'm happy to be here today. So thank you for joining us this afternoon. But I'm almost more excited to be moderating this panel of amazing women in the industry. So I'm excited to introduce everyone. The first person I'm introducing is Megan Jasper, CEO of Sub Pop Records.
Hello, thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. Next, I'm going to introduce Amy Dragon, mastering engineer at Telegraph Mastering in Portland, Oregon.
Hi, Amy Dragon, mastering engineer, Portland, Oregon. Super stoked to be here.
Next, I'll introduce Kimié Miner, Grammy-nominated producer, singer-songwriter, recording artist, and founder of Haku Collective in Honolulu, Hawaii.
Aloha!
So good to see you. Next, I'll introduce Besa Gordon, influence and on-air radio personality at Jammin' 107.5 and B95.
Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday.
I like the gusto that you said that with. Like, it's a Wednesday. It's better than a Monday. I'll take it.
Almost through the week.
There we go. Next, I'll introduce Lilian Blair, who is producer, engineer, and teacher at the recording studio workshop at the Vera project.
Hello.
And last but not least, the performer herself, Shaina Shepherd, singer-songwriter, music educator, and community organizer.
Hey team, we out here. This is gonna be fun.
Awesome. Well, one, thank you all again so much for being here and being a part of this panel today. We have some awesome questions that people have submitted in advance, in addition to some questions that I kind of just want to ask y'all in general. So we're going to kind of get down to the nitty gritty, but we'll start with something easy. And I'm going to start with what was it like coming up in the music industry now versus your experience when you first started?
I can go really quick. I would say The biggest difference between coming in the industry now than when I first started is the main thing that everyone is always asking me in terms of how to get in radio. They're like, how do you get in radio? How do you get in radio? How do I get on the radio station? Well, thanks to COVID, there's not really street teams anymore, right? So the way that I got on the radio was literally by being on the street team, slanging tents, carrying speakers, being outside in the rain, doing all the things that you didn't want to do. But that's how I was able to get my foot in the door and get my foot in the building. And unfortunately, with COVID, we don't have street teamers anymore. So, my PD always says I'm like the last generation of people that literally come up from the bottom, work in the office, get a full-time job, and now you're on like multiple different stations for iHeartRadio. So I would say the biggest difference is that you're not really able, at least in my industry, it's not as easy to come up in a grassroots way. You almost have to kind of go viral on social media in order to get some attention these days, when before it was really just about working really, really hard rather than getting like a lucky TikTok with 1 million views.
I think you're speaking truth to power and talking about how social media has also just changed the game so radically, especially with everyone being in their homes during COVID. So I think you're speaking truth to power there. I would love to hear from some other folks as well. What is the difference for you all? What is the difference now?
I'd love to kind of talk more about what Besa said, and that was I actually posted. I was living in Hong Kong, and I was an indie artist, and I put my music on my MySpace as a way to share with my friends. But that was sort of right at the cusp that we weren't using YouTube as much. So like she's saying, it's like it was right before this whole viral thing. So it was really hard for me, but it was really about that. It was kind of a blend of like being on the streets and performing. I literally performed on the streets. And MySpace was kind of that thing that helped me get beyond Hawaii, because we're so isolated in Hawaii that it's hard to get our music heard in the mainland, is what we call it, but mainstream. And so it was sort of a blend of those two things combining, and touring and doing all of those street, like on the street kind of activity mixed with MySpace. That was how it was for me.
My perspective is a little bit different just because I'm not a performer and my work is more of a desk job, but a really fun desk job. It's different now in that I think there are more entry points, and the business itself is far more complex. But you still, like, as far as like my world goes, you still can come up within it, because if you can come into one of those entry points, you're able to build experience. And the thing that's fascinating right now is that all of the marketing departments and the sales departments are so connected and reliant upon one another, partially because of the social media component. And just the basic overlap that social media and digital platforms provide, that you can acquire experience and kind of keep building on that. But 500 years ago, when I started at Sub Pop, there were fewer entry points. And also, just going off of the conversation that we're having today, there were way less women in the mix. Still have a long way to go, though.
I think that's an awesome jumping off point. I'd love to hear from Shaina, Lilian, and Amy as well. The next question is, what challenges have you all faced due to being a woman in the industry? And is there any particular advice that you wish you had starting out?
I'll jump in on that. I think of myself as kind of new to the industry. I started a band now 5 years ago, and that was like my first time doing anything in music. And now I'm on project 2 out of God knows how many, what I'm saying. So I'd say that starting in music in a male-dominated music genre, rock and roll, and then a male-dominated music city, Seattle at the time. And just trying to navigate how to create your own art when you're being influenced by, that kind of environment. You want to make friends for sure. You want to get in where you fit in and be able to contribute to the greater team and not just make your own stuff. So I kind of, I'd say if I was going to give myself advice in the past, I would say focus in on being able to take in other people's experience and let it inform your experience, especially when you're at the end of the day a creative, but don't necessarily bend your creations based on those experiences. I mean, that's just like a life hack, just being open, but also present and strong. Also connecting with women is hard in music. I feel like a lot of us have always had to climb those steep hills in order to get to the points that we're at. There's just a lot of misogyny, there's a lot of like gatekeeping, and at the end of the day, no matter what genre you're in. So I feel like I would also recommend to myself in the past to just immediately be open to women and their perspectives and their grinds, and try to build friendships with people that probably have had similar experiences that have left us into a place where we want to make music that we scream in, Yeah.
That's an amazing point. And I think it reminds me of something my grandma used to say back in North Carolina, but I'm a Southerner, so it's going to come out. But she used to say borrowed knowledge is, there you go. She used to say borrowed knowledge is better than bought. Don't go broke. And I think you're speaking something to that power right there. Lilian and Amy, what do you all think?
I think, like, for me, one of the biggest challenges of being a woman is sort of experiencing a lot of like self-doubt in terms of my place in the industry. Like, when I was going to school, I was one of 5 women out of 40, and we didn't really have that camaraderie that you'd expect just because of the environment that we were in. In terms of like negative experiences due to my gender, I can think of a few, but I can't necessarily tie them to like specifics of being within the industry as opposed to just what women experience. I'd say though that going along with it, over time, I've definitely found myself getting stronger. I'm also trans, and that has its own set of difficulties that come along with it. And so I've noticed just becoming more comfortable in myself, I've become more comfortable working in this industry as a woman.
Imposter syndrome is something that I think many folks with minoritized identities really face, but also when you have multiple minoritized identities and we start to think about ideas of intersectionality, and then what does that mean when we show up to spaces with different identities that are salient to us in different ways and other ways that impact our lived experience. I think you're speaking about what does it mean to be an artist and also be your full authentic self in ways that you feel seen, heard, and valued, that lets your audience or those that you care about or those who see themselves in you to also feel seen, heard, and validated. And I think it's one of the most interesting challenges in music, given the nature of the entertainment industry in itself and who's chosen for certain roles and who is the person choosing the roles. So thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you. Amy?
Absolutely. I think everything that's already been commented on is just really well said and resonates with me immensely. I think, to just add that, starting out being a woman in a room and with a bunch of engineers and being the only woman there it's intimidating, and there is a lot of, I think, pushing through, maybe struggling with how to relate and how welcome you feel or don't feel in that space, but pushing through that and finding building relationships and building communities, both in those spaces where you may find yourself being the only woman, and also finding community in places where women are gathering and talking. I've had a lot of really lovely conversations with women who are engineering recently, and just kind of waxing the merits of building our own spaces that are different from the you know the constructs of things that already exist versus, you know, trying to strive to have our seat at that table with our male peers, and there really being merit to both, truly. And so I think that is the advice that I would give to myself as a younger person and to anybody, is that there is merit to, you know, really kind of scrapping your way to that table with the men and being there and taking up a space and feeling like your opinion is valid, and trusting yourself to say what you feel and speak your heart. And also, you know, get together with women. We can build something new too. It doesn't have to just be one way.
What you're saying directly aligns with some other questions people have had. And it makes me kind of want to go in two directions, but I'll stick with one for just now. And we'll talk about what does it mean for our current experience and what does successful, meaningful allyship look like? Where have you had someone else who did not identify as women, who typically, I think in the industry, we see a lot of cis men, but where they have put themselves out there to advocate for you? What does that look like in a way that's been helpful, meaningful, and non-performative? And how did it change something for you?
Go
ahead.
I would just say for me, it happens to be all of my bosses at iHeart. They're all men, and they're constantly championing, you know what I'm trying to say, child. They're constantly saying great things about me when I'm not in the room, and I never know about it. It's never like, hey, I'm gonna have a meeting with this person, or hey, I'm gonna pitch you for this. It's like after it's already been solidified, and then when I finally meet somebody and they're like, oh my goodness, this person speaks so highly of you, they've said so many great things about you, and they're like, I need to know you. And I feel like advocating for a woman can definitely be putting her in a proper space, but I sometimes really think it's amazing to just have like those great things said about you and to be actually edified properly when you didn't even know that was happening. Like, there's been so many times where like my manager, he's the owner of Converge, is actually like my booking manager. So it's like, I'll meet different people and I won't even know that he was just speaking of me. And they're just always like, he speaks so highly of you. He supports you so much. And they just feel how genuine that is. And it's not performative. You know what I mean? It's not like he's doing it for brownie points. He's doing it because he actually cares, along with all of my bosses at iHeart. So literally my life is my life, and I'm able to live on South Lake Union in Seattle, Washington, simply because of all of the men that I work with that really just champion for me and just put me in the right spaces.
What is the importance of a cosign, right? Who's helping y'all get a seat at the table? When we're not even at the table, we're not invited to the dinner table. We're just expected to be cooking the meals half the time. And that is a bit of, maybe a bit of an overstatement given the era, but to some extent, I think it's very, very true given today's social political culture, is what does it mean when you have someone who's truly championing you, when they have your back? So I think that's a beautiful thing to hear about. But I'm going to segue out of that because I don't want to center men too much. It's just the women in the mix march, I just want to make sure that some folks are hearing in the back what they could be doing, hypothetically speaking, in their day jobs, just going to shout that out there. But I did want to go to another point that you all spoke about, was what does it mean to create a space for women? What does that look like? What does it mean to build a network for women to see themselves, to see us in it, right? But also, how do we get women in these other roles? Right? I mean, we see performers, and I think that's where we tend to see women in music the most. It's when it's for some quote unquote entertainment value. But I think there's so many also behind the scenes where we don't see women. I think given some of the statistics that Jessica talked about earlier. Lilian, would you actually kind of share about this first? Oh, no, go ahead. Someone just volunteered. Please jump in.
Yeah, so I co-founded an audio engineering certificate program at North Seattle College. And in addition to focusing on sort of shaking up audio education in the city, we were intentional with having all women instructors. So we have that, really that representation that was not being seen in our other audio education programs. And I am very heartened by the fact that the classes that I've taught have been about 50% women. So I think that the interest is there to get into engineering. It's just now comes down to creating those opportunities to really bring people in.
Yeah, so I mean, what does it mean to make sure we're represented? But we're also pulling our people in.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else want to jump in? I saw some excited faces when I said that question. Megan?
I wouldn't mind jumping in. I think, especially going off of that survey that we talked about at the beginning, the things that seem to be working for so many women are mentorships, are internships, and opportunities for real networking. And, I kind of kept going back to that because it's not that we think that works. We're being told that those are effective ways to bring people in. So, and it made me realize, interestingly, I am contacted way more often by women wanting to come into the industry than I am men, like by a long shot. And I take a lot of those meetings. Each week. They're almost always women right now, which is super exciting. But the thing that I'm taking away from that study is like, we have to keep doing that. Like it's not just meeting up with them and chatting. It's like, it has to go beyond that, which is challenging right now, especially when we're working still partially like this. It's not easy to network. It's not easy to truly bring someone in the mix in a way that's not a video chat, at least in my world right now. But it did resonate, and I do feel like that has to be like a really important takeaway from me. But the other thing that I want to add is one of the reasons this is so important is because whenever there is too much, whether it's men or whether it's white people, like the more diverse we can make that table, the smarter that group of people is. So it really has to do with elevating our collective intelligence. And this is the only way it's going to happen.
Yeah, I think you're saying something incredibly beautiful, and it's about what does diversity mean? Because I think so often when you have minoritized identities, you hear people saying that we need diversity, and I think oftentimes we have dominant identifying folks who sometimes struggle to grapple with what does this feasibly mean? Well, increased diversity means a diversity of perspectives, of lived experiences, of ways of being. It's a diversity of understanding of trauma or of how we celebrate. That's what diversity can do. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Nonetheless, what it does for innovation and what it does from different cultures, and considering that, like I think what people like to attach dollar signs to it, right? But outside of what dollars means, it's freedom. It's freedom for people to express themselves because they can understand that difference is okay, right? And it's not something that's othered necessarily, but it's something that's welcome and accepted. And so I think you're speaking truth to power.
Yeah, it's a strength.
Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful strength. And I don't know about y'all, but I like to say that women are pretty resilient. I don't know. It's like if we're supposed to carry babies or something like that, our bodies are built for a lot of things, right? But I do want to segue to that point of what does maternity look like? Because I do think the world treats women differently based on if we have children, if we don't have children, because either way, there's a thought for both of them. And kind of wanting to sitting with what does it look like to balance motherhood and being in the music industry? And is there any advice that anyone here has to share? And if you don't have anything to share, that's okay too. Just nose goes it, so I'm kidding. I know Kimié is actually a mother as well. You said a mother of three when we talked earlier. I love for you to share something in particular about that. How do you balance your career and how you do this?
Yeah. Yes. So I have a 1, 2, and 3-year-old, but they're all turning up a year. So my life's already feeling better because it's definitely really hard when they all really need you, like actually physically need you to do stuff. Um, but the coolest thing is when I became a mother is when I really found my spark. You know, I was really like a light went off, a capital L light. And so it's kind of opened up this channel for me. And then it gave me deeper meaning, you know, like legacy and what am I doing and what am I going to leave behind. But, you know, I, even before that, I've always been motherly and I've always felt this compassion for other artists and my friends in the industry and stuff like that. But one of the things I realized was that what I thought was the qualities that I had that I thought made me powerless in this industry, I found out when I became a mother were actually my superpowers and they were my greatest strengths. And they were the things that I really accepted and I owned. And that's when I found my power. My true power was because I didn't have the luxury of time anymore. I don't. And so I really have to pick and choose my projects and what I'm going to spend my time on so that I can reserve energy for my family and my kids. It's really important to us, especially here in Hawaii and, you know, in our community. Our community is our family. So it really mattered more to me having children because I had my own little beings. But even before that, that's how I grew up. And that's how music is shared here. It's called Kanikapila jam sessions where artists all get together and they're just jamming, you know, we're just freestyling. And there's something so beautiful about that. But I do think that when I became a mother, it kind of showed me my truest strengths and how to own them. Because when I started out, I kind of wanted to push them away. I didn't see anyone like me in the mainstream industry or on screens or anything like that. So I wanted to be different and I didn't want to own who I was. Now that I have kids, I want them to be proud of who they are and use that as their power.
You know, if I may, I'd love to hear, if you feel like sharing, of course, but an example of what that is. Because I think so often when we consider ourselves, I think some people, they struggle and they think they're in a silo. They may not be able to identify sometimes what even is their superpower, nonetheless, because they're so consumed with how it feels like a weakness. And if
Yes.
anyone else can kind of share that, what is a weakness you may identify or a learning opportunity or however you want to flowery word it, right? But what is your superpower? How did you turn it into your superpower in this industry, whether it's being a mother or some of the other lived experiences that we do have, whether it's gender diversity, whether it's, I mean, I noticed that maybe y'all noticed too in the Pacific Northwest, there's not as many people of color, right? And so there's a lot of these identities that are so salient to us. What have you all done to hone that superpower?
May I just jump in? And I so don't want to hog the mic, but I feel like the mom thing is one of the most important things in this industry right now, in my opinion, because it takes so many people out of the industry. And I just want to say that when the women with whom I work come back into the office after having children, and I know it's frowned upon, but people don't say it, I have to tell you what they come into the office with. They come into the office with an ability to prioritize things in a way that is far beyond what anyone else is able to do in the office. They can multitask in a way that's totally different than everybody else in the office, and they can read a room and sense things from people that is, again, way beyond most other people in the office. So it just made me so happy when you called it a superpower, because that is exactly what it is. And the more moms that we actually have, the better we're going to be. It is a superpower. It's the ultimate superpower.
That's powerful. Thank you for highlighting that. I'd love to get something from Shaina. I think you've been quiet a little lately. I'd love to tap you in. And I want to hear more about your superpower and also everyone else's as well. Kind of want to get something, but Shaina, I'm gonna have you go first.
Oh gosh, my superpower. I don't know. You know, I think it is challenging. Maybe it's because, I don't know, I grew up with a lot of siblings in a religious home. And I think that one of the challenges I'm grappling with is how to remain humble, because that makes me feel like me and also advocate for myself. This is one of those moments, I think. This is one of those moments like where I'm not really sure. I guess my superpower is just trying to maintain my sense of self, and not being afraid of really anything. And to be honest, I've had some weird, can I say the S word? Can you swear? I've had some weird crap happen in my life. You know, most people who choose art and artistic environments have similar reasons why they, become bearers of communication, to get people through hard times and connect people with themselves. And that's why I choose to do what I do. But yeah, I guess I'm figuring that out. Word.
Sometimes that's the process, is figuring out what is our superpower. Because if you would ask 10-year-old me that reading was a superpower, I would have laughed and asked why, that's all I did in the library, to be honest, during lunch. But nowadays, I'm in a doctoral program, and so I can understand that maybe reading is somewhat helpful. No, I'm just kidding. But thank you so much. But one thing I do want to touch on, because I think, Megan, you talked about how being a mother takes you out of this industry. And another thing that takes women out of the industry too is age. I think one thing that the way we've been seen, especially for those who are in front of the camera or they are facing the community in that entertainment way, there's something to be said about women and not giving the grace of aging, not giving the same ability to grow maturity, especially physically, as men are given. And so one thing I did want to touch on is, how have you dealt with ageism, if you have dealt with it, or how are you beginning to think about how you might deal with ageism if you haven't yet dealt with it? Is that something that you're even thinking about in general? Have you made your career decisions based around it? I think for some people, whether it's motherhood or ageism or feeling they don't belong or will not be able to belong in the industry, they kind of base what they're doing off. So I'd love to hear if you have thought about it. And if you haven't, love to hear about that too.
I love being here. This one, yeah, thinking about this one a lot. And plus I'm so 1 second. Well, I guess we'll be a part of this. I'm on tour right now. First tour of my life. Here's a moment of it. Hey guys, I'm taking over this room. You guys mind not being in the kitchen for 30 minutes? Thank you. Here's the job, But I just turned 30. Oh, I almost spit it out of my mouth. It's fine. It's not a big deal. But, at the same time as being 30, I'm on my first tour. We're going all these different states. We're seeing the way I'm feeling every day. We're in a different state, right? A different music community. So there's different different understandings of beauty norms and social norms. One day everybody was giving me smoke because I'm Black. Next day, everybody's giving me smoke because my hair is short and they think I'm gay. Not a bad thing, by the way. And, you're just trying to figure out who wants to hear the music? Who is interested in connecting on the ways that the world is changing, and who has a story that feels like it was written in the same book as me? And that usually has nothing to do with age or gender or racial identity, actually. Never, really, most of the time, really doesn't at the end of the day. So I think I am coming to a point where to age gracefully the way that my mother has taught me is the best way, is probably relevant for us in our journey here. I think is to age in a sense where we can take in all of the knowledge and the lessons that we've been able to gather and put them in action before we're off this earth. So, a skincare routine will help that out, it was a joke. Who cares? Really, self-care. But let's just change the way that I think it's important for the longevity of all of us and our careers and our influence and our perspectives that are very valuable to change that conversation regarding age, the way that it's continued to evolve. So Can we yell at some dudes again?
That's real. That's real. Amy, I saw you unmute. I'd love to tap you
I
in too.
did. I'm into this one too. So I think in at least from my perspective in engineering context, I think getting older is advantageous, and I'm kind of excited about being like aging into being an engineer, because I think that it's, there's still a perception of, age, wisdom, and craft and experience, and so and with engineering discography, and so I still look up to the women that came before me in this field, and when I attend conferences, those are the women who are speaking, and the women that I'm learning from are women who came before me by a decade or more, and so yeah, it's a little bit, it feels kind of nice being a female and thinking about getting older in this field. I have to worry about things like my hearing, like how many, about not wearing earplugs when I was younger, and how much is that going to like jack my career when I am an older lady, but things like that are relevant to me.
I think you raised a good point too. I didn't think anything about like tinnitus and like how like literally just listening to loud music can also impact you. So it's something for me to think about, because I stay blasting music in my Honda Civic. So I'd love to see if anyone else has something they'd like to share too about this particular question.
Well, I sort of find myself in a sweet spot. I'm in my mid-30s, and I'm older enough from the artists that I work with that I can really take on that leadership position that comes with producing records, and they sort of will look up to me as sort of having that additional decade-ish of life experience. But I also am finding myself moving on out of that point where I can actually like relate to a lot of younger artists that I'm working with. So that's sort of my worry when it comes to aging, is just being able to be on the same page as everyone and really be able to continue to take on that guidance role. I think the trick for that is to just stay involved and to continue going out and seeing bands and talking to people. But it's definitely something that's on my mind and something that I am trying to stay ahead of.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's something, I think one thing, it's interesting to hear, and I do a lot of DEI work. I do a lot of consulting and talking in general. I talk a lot from the South. And so one thing that I think is interesting is everything you all are sharing. I don't think I've really ever heard this conversation from cis men. I don't think I've quite heard it in this industry. And maybe I've heard it in sports before, but I think it's a shared thing, because your knees are only good for so long, right? But I think it's something to really think about. It's just, what are we doing for ourselves? And I think to someone's point earlier, it's how are we recreating this industry in a way that celebrates all of us at every stage in our life, at every stage of our career. And I think that's something that we've lost during COVID, is how do we truly celebrate each other? How are we in community with each other? And so to that question, I'm asking flip into that, right? So we went from talking about ageism and what does it mean to age in this industry. I kind of want to talk about youth for a second, and then we'll open the questions for Q&A from everyone, because I love to see what people in the audience are thinking. But when we talk about what we mean to redefine this industry in a way that celebrates us, how do we change? How do we impact and influence young women, young girls' interest in this? How do we help the next generation cultivate this beautiful musical community that does celebrate us? What does that look like in your dream world? And if everyone could say something. So I could do an order, but I don't think we're all in order. So I'm gonna get us going with the person who is unmuted, Lilian again.
Well, when it comes to inspiration, I think just existing in the industry is and being visible is enough to get people inspired and get them to want to go on this journey. I know working at the Vera project, which is youth focused, I've been able to be that mentor figure for a lot of young women who have told me that just my existence has given them that courage and resilience. to continue on in a difficult field. I also try and make a point of, hiring women to assist me, to really give them that experience, but also to create in their heads, at the very least, that this is a viable career path. So I think the way that we do that is just to be intentional with our actions, as well as to simply exist in a visible way.
I will go on top of that because I really love what you said. And because I struggled and I didn't have many mentors, so it's become my life's work to be an artist for artists. I created a company to help future artists, so up and coming artists, but also established artists, my peers, anything that I can do to help make it easier for them, because it's already hard enough for us. There's already enough against us. So I really believe that when we celebrate each other's light, we catch a tan. I believe that 100%. And I want to stand next to all the brightest stars and the hottest suns, because it only makes me brighter and warmer and feel better about myself, and I believe that 100%. And when I mentor, I also do mentorship work. And when I work with them, I try to put them together because it's about community. And I want the next generation, all the kids and the up and coming artists that I mentor, to have each other. And I want them to do the same thing that I'm doing with my peers, with their peers. And it's about creating that celebration, that community with each other, to change things, to see further. And I really believe that, what you said, Lilian, and I really echo that. And let's do more of that.
I'm gonna have to put that quote on my mood board. I'm not even kidding. I'm gonna write that down after this, because I'm trying to catch a bunch of tans apparently, because I'm trying to celebrate everyone's light. Besa, I love to hear more from you as well.
Let me see. I would say, aside from mentorship, I think it's really important for women to obviously celebrate other women, but show women that we can be in these spaces and we can take up spaces in the same manner that men do. For so many years, I would show up in spaces and I would kind of minimize myself a little bit, just because I felt like when I show up as Besa, the boss Besa, sometimes I just felt like it would be too strong. But I think that women wanting to be in the radio industry, wanting to be in the media industry, or just any industry, I think it's important for them to see people like myself and like all of you be able to show up in these spaces, take up space, as I want to say Shaina was saying, and do it proudly and unapologetically. There's so many times when women want to be assertive and they're like, oh, she's a this, she's a that. But if a man does it, he's a boss, he's great, he's this, it's handsome. But I think it's important for us to kind of change that narrative, so that way we can continue to celebrate women and celebrate women taking up these spaces and putting other women in that position, because you were able to take up that space and now you're able to move someone else in to either take your old position or, mentor them so they can know how to also take up space unapologetically.
I'm just sitting with that one right there, taking up space unapologetically. I think so often women are taught we have to apologize for breathing, for existing. So I think the unapologetic part is powerful. Megan, I saw you on mute.
I was just going to say that was so beautifully said, Besa, and I couldn't agree more. I think it is the most important thing, and we are in positions of bringing other women in, and it is a responsibility, that one that I proudly accept.
Can I just make a note of how dope this is? Literally, I mean, I have one of my New Year's resolutions is I only want to speak on my own experience because I've gotten in trouble in my past. So to be fair, I'll say this anecdote. The best year of my life professionally was this past year, because I was found by women like Megan Jasper and helped in ways that have been so crucial for me. the lessons that you get from the mentorship situation are far outweigh a dollar sign. It far outweighs the tokenism of visibility can sometimes become, because it's a trust that is passed on, an internal trust, something that's so deeply personal as like, I'm spending my life doing this. And I see that you're trying to spend your life doing this. So I'm just gonna take these little lessons real quick. And whenever I have time or coffee break, give that to you. That's like, you know, it's so, I think that a lot of the time, I mean, I'm an Aries, so I feel that sometimes it's challenging, but I think it's challenging sometimes for us to take those lessons that we learned that are so personal, that have been like through the fire, in order to create the kinds of knowledge that we have and share it with people where you don't know how they're going to use it. And so the trust that I think is developed over, you know, things like this, opportunities for people to share their stories and connect with each other. The chat is lit, full of people that are so in the insiders of music communities that we're dealing with, both local, national. I mean, this is really, really fabulous. And I think that my dream, I guess, back to that original question, would be that these kind of communities can happen without it, there even needing to be, you know, a woman in the mix thing, where it can literally be in every room, a hey girl moment, all over the world, all over the country, and in every musical space, especially studio spaces, where there's like, where it's really important to have intentional creative intention. You know, just those spaces especially, but even, you know, networking and, you know, going to a jam and being like, I like the way that you play, or not feeling like you have to own, not feeling like you have to prove your value, because you're already there and everybody is valuable, because it's all, that's the beauty of like these creative communities, really, is that every voice should be heard and recognized, as to Megan's point earlier, that those are the smartest people. So that would be my dream, that, you know, we can acknowledge and celebrate the connection of femininity, and then also get to work, you know, that would be like real dope.
That's so real. That's so real. And I think all of you probably have a career, if you all wanted to, in public speaking. Like, I just want to name that real quick, that I think all of you could be public speakers or the next Oprah, but we'll just keep going with that later. And I do want to hear from Amy too, and then leave room. I see there is one question in Q&A, but I do want to hear from Amy to close this question out.
Absolutely. I mean, all of you, everything you said, all of these comments, just perfect. And I think, to put a pin in it, just being brave. This is not, I don't want to speak publicly. I don't want to run for public office. Like, I am generally a private person and have a hard time being seen and being public, and trying to gather my courage and say yes to things like this, and say yes to speaking engagements, you know, where there's youth, where there's, you know, rock camps and mentoring and all that stuff. Saying yes to that, you know, when there are time constraints is difficult, and sometimes I don't want to, but just showing up for each other, and showing up for the community, and making it a priority. I am not here because of my own merits alone. I'm here because I was helped along by my mentor. I wouldn't be here if I wasn't mentored into this profession. I didn't go to audio engineering school. I am a person who was taught, and that is amazing. And so there's huge value to that. And yeah, that, I don't think I can say anything that hasn't been said beautifully.
Thank y'all so much for answering these questions. We'll do this one rapid fire. Just give me viral or work. Just answer this Q&A question. What's better, going viral or actually having to put in the work? If everyone can unmute and just say viral or work, let's go.
Work.
Work.
All right, so I think Rihanna's here. I think that's what's just happening. I think if y'all could also sing the rest of the song, for the rest of us, I think we all appreciate it. But thank y'all so much for being here. And to the audience, thank you so much for being here too. I hope you all learned nearly as much as I did. I'm just kidding. I'm sure y'all learned more. But y'all have a beautiful evening. Enjoy your day. And thank you.
Bye, guys. Girl power.
quick.